Welcome to the show, everybody. It's week 2 waiver wire pickups. I'm going to give you all the optimal pickups for this week in the waiver wire. Week 1 is in the books. Now we are heading into fantasy football week 2. I'm excited, but listen, you got to address your needs. That's what we're going to do here today. Going to go over the guys I recommend and why I recommend them based on their points. Now you got to watch out. Sometimes there is those anomaly weeks for some players. They have a good week 1, you pick them up off waiver wire, and they don't do anything for the rest of the season. So we're going to try our best to avoid those duds. Okay, guys. So be sharp on the waiver wire. I'm going to give you all the optimal pickups for this week. Before we get into this, guys, go download the app. I know you've got a cell phone. Go download the DraftKings app right now. Use promo code FFLion, guys. It's good to see the football is finally back. Now you can dive into the game weekly and draft. They are the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL. You know, it's very simple, guys. You pick your lineup, you set your salary cap, and see how it stacks against the competition. So I play every single week. I did well this past week. I won about $15, and I'm happy with that. I'm very happy with that because I just basically played a small prize entry. It was like, I think it was like $4 or $3. I think it was like $3 to get in or something like that. There was a lot of people in this pool. I ended up with some money. I did really well with Adam Thielen. Who else went off for me? I did actually have, believe it or not, I had Herbert in this lineup, expecting him to have a big game. I know he had a tough matchup, and he had a safe game for me. And I also had, who else did I have here? I had Travis Kelce in my lineup. Kelce crushed it for me as well. So I ended up winning about $15. But listen, all you got to do, guys, is go download the DraftKings app, use promo code FFLion, get signed up right now. And again, you don't got to worry about injuries. We see players fall all the time through the season. You get to draft every week and enhance that game watching experience. Go download the app and use promo code FFLion. There's also a link here below on YouTube. All right, let's get to week 2 waiver wire right now. All right, guys, let's dive into week 2 waiver wire. Before we do, manscaped.com. Use promo code SHOWERLION, guys, right now. Amazing fit and finish on the product. Navigational light, skin-safe technology. You'll be very happy with your purchase, and you'll be happy you're saving 20% on it using promo code SHOWERLION. Pull over if you're driving. Go do it right now. Get yourself, treat yourself, guys. Why not? You know, Christmas will be here before you know it. All right, guys. Waiver wire. Let's talk about the quarterbacks here to pick up off the waiver wire. And it was a crazy week 1. So not only am I going to give you picks, I'm going to dive in to what I think of some of these players, some of the upside, would I pick them up, that type of thing. Now, with quarterback, what I tell you guys all the time in 16 rounds, you got to have a backup plan for a backup plan. So you always have to have 2 quarterbacks just to cover yourself for lack of performance if one quarterback, lack of performance, or bye weeks, or just simply if they get injured, right? A lot of people had Ryan Fitzmagic as their backup. He's banged up. So it happens, right? He's going to be out for several weeks. The MRI showed a hip issue, subluxation. I can't even pronounce these medical terminologies, but it's a hip issue, okay? So injuries do happen to quarterbacks. They happen to all positions. So you got to have yourself a backup plan for a backup plan, all right? So when we're talking quarterbacks here, let's talk about it. Speaking of Ryan Fitzmagic, pick up Tyler Heineke if you are desperate, if you're in a bind. And, he wasn't the greatest this week. I mean, he came in a little bit later in the game, but he did pull out to get a touchdown. I think he had 122 yards and a touchdown, which again isn't bad for a guy who has to step into the role. So if you are desperate, Tyler Heineke, Ryan Fitzmagic is out. He's got some good receiving targets there, okay? Let's move on here. Tyrod Taylor, another good pickup here, finished 11th amongst quarterbacks. Now, the interesting thing with Tyrod Taylor is he going to be the long-term solution? That's something you got to think about and consider. I don't know what's going on with Watson or what the whole deal is. And here's the thing, with Tyrod, being a Tyrod owner years ago when he was on Buffalo, he was my backup. He has that upside. He has that upside on the ground, when he runs. But it doesn't, he had 4 attempts for 40 yards, is he going to hurt himself? That's number 1. Number 2, I don't think he's a long-term solution. So that's something that turns me off. And he has those volatile games. I don't really trust him, but he did have the 2 touchdowns, and it depends on how easy of a matchup he has. If he has an easier matchup, he'll perform. A tougher matchup, he's gonna struggle. Okay, he does have that experience, but again, I'm not 100% sold on him. But he's a safe fantasy play sometimes with some ceiling in some weeks. Okay, Teddy Bridgewater had a good week, and Teddy Bridgewater finished 14th amongst quarterbacks, finishing with 2 touchdowns and 264 yards. Another waiver wire pickup you may want to consider, again, finishing 14th amongst quarterbacks with 20.46 points. Teddy Bridgewater, again, if you're in a bind 2-quarterback league, he does have the weapons. Okay, now Jerry Jeudy's going to be out for several weeks. I think it was an ankle or a calf strain or something like that. He's going to be out for weeks. Let's say 3 to 4 weeks. They've got Sutton, they've got Fant, they've got options. Although he didn't use Sutton as much as I thought he would this past week. Melvin Gordon had the big breakout run. Got lucky there. It's going to hurt Javonte Williams a little bit. So Melvin Gordon's got to fall before Williams gets better and gets more volume. But again, when you're looking at Teddy Bridgewater, a guy you could pick up off the waiver wire if you need a quarterback or a good backup quarterback. On Jameis Winston, now he was a free agent in a lot of leagues. 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He didn't throw for a whole ton of yards, but the guy got it done. He was very effective. He was explosive. It looked like all that weird training he did in the offseason is actually paying off. I don't know if you guys saw those videos. I posted them on Instagram where he just looks really awkward working out. He's getting hit by his trainer and he's like all jittery. And it was just really just a weird sight to watch. But it looked like it was some sort of Cobra Kai special ninja training of some sort. Either way, it's working. It worked in preseason. And it's working in week 1, having him finish 3rd amongst quarterbacks and making a statement without throwing an interception, which is what he was notorious for. When was it last time he played? Like last year or the year before. So again, Jameis Winston, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how well he does if he keeps and maintains his pace. And I don't see this being maintained. So just be cautious there. Now, looking at running backs, the most scarce position, and you can see how scarce it is. We know the Ravens running backs have been down. A lot of people may have picked this guy up, though, is Tyson Williams. He had a good game yesterday, finishing 9th amongst running backs for the week. He did have that big run for a touchdown, 9 attempts. So the problem with Tyson Williams, or any running back from the Ravens for that matter, is that you are contending with Lamar Jackson. I just don't see the volume there for Tyson Williams. I think he'll be and he had a breakout run. Is that going to happen often? No. This is one of those guys that's a good player, potentially has some upside, could be the guy in Baltimore. So why not? If he's available, pick him up. I'm sure he was picked up already in your leagues when the Ravens running backs went down. But if he is available, may consider him. But I just don't know if the volume is going to be there. Okay, he could be one of those guys that he looked good early, but could crap the bed, or he could boom. Kenneth Gainwell, another guy you may want to pick up here, finishing 22nd, guys, amongst running backs. And there is an opportunity there. He had 9 attempts for a touchdown. Again, one thing you got to watch out here, and he's on the Eagles for those people who don't know. Kenneth Gainwell, again, only 9 attempts for the touchdown. A lot of these running backs were inflated with a touchdown. So that's something you got to be cautious about, is a lot of these guys will fall. Like, for example, who was it? Austin Eckler, right? Finishing 27th amongst running backs with 11 points. The only reason he averaged 3.8 yards per carry, but the only reason he even finished 27th, which isn't very good, is because he had that one touchdown, okay? Or did he have a touchdown, Austin Eckler? Yes, I believe he did. So again, Austin, will they continue on with that? That's the big question. Is the touchdown going to be the reason that they are inflated? That's the problem, and that's something that you got to look at, right? It's a 1-week wonder for some of these guys, and they're very touchdown dependent. Be cautious with that, and you're not fooled on the waiver wire, okay? Also on the waiver wire here, you might want to consider is Elijah Mitchell. Now, here's the interesting thing with the 49ers. They always get hurt, right? Raheem Mostert out pretty much for the season. Let's assume he's out for the season here. Elijah Mitchell, 6th-round pick out of Louisiana, prototypical body type, 5'10", 204 pounds, 5 pounds. Elijah Mitchell, came in, and he did well. He finished 15th amongst running backs. A guy you definitely want to consider. 19 attempts, 104 yards, 5.5 yards per carry, but only 16.4 fantasy points. Either way, he looked good. The problem is Trey Sermon was a 3rd-round pick. So that's something to consider when you are investing, because I know a lot of people are going to jump to the waiver wire and invest a lot into Elijah Mitchell, and I totally understand it. But when Trey Sermon comes back, whenever that is, let's say it's next week, that may be an issue, because remember, the 49ers invested higher draft capital in Sermon. and he may be used. Maybe he's better. We don't know how he's going to translate to the NFL. So Trey Sermon may be a thorn in the side of Elijah Mitchell, or Elijah Mitchell could just run with the ball and be the guy. So a very, very risky pick there. But again, I definitely see the upside. If you have an FFA budget, free agency acquisition budget in your league where you have an X amount of salary where you spend, let's say it's $1,000 or $100, a lot of people end up blowing their load on waiver wire week 1, getting, let's say, an Elijah Mitchell, and then he turns out to be a 1-week wonder. Trey Sermon comes in and takes a job. We don't really know. So just be cautious and just make sure you balance, your budget. Make sure you spend the right money, okay? And then also Jamal Williams available in a lot of leagues. Swift had a decent game as well. So did Jamal Williams. Now, here's the thing, guys. Jamal Williams finished third. Are they, 9 attempts? Again, very inflated with a nice run and a touchdown. So is that going to continue with Jamal Williams? Swift also had a nice run and pretty much what did he finish with? His receptions were good. 8 receptions, 65 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Both finishing 3 and 4. I mean, is that running game going to continue with the Lions? I'm not fully sold. So that's something you really, really need to watch out for if you are getting either Jamal Williams or Elijah Mitchell this week, because again, they're in a bit of a committee, kind of an inflated week. Be cautious there, okay? Wide receivers, there's a whole ton of them here. I'm going to not dive into too much detail, but there's so much to go through. Zach Pascal showing he could be the one. I was all high on Pittman. Pascal was the guy that did well, so that's something to monitor there because Carson Wentz had it in a little bit tough. He was under a lot of pressure, even though he had a good O-line. And he was pushed, and Zach Pascal was his outlet for him it wasn't a lot. It was 5 targets, 4 receptions, but it was the 2 touchdowns to Pascal that really made it. He only had 43 yards, very touchdown dependent. I'm assuming he's not going to get 2 touchdowns next week, but with those 2 touchdowns, he finished 16th amongst wide receivers. Pretty good, but definitely a consideration on waiver wire, considering there's no T.Y. Hilton and that wide receiver 1 position is up for grabs, okay? Zach Pascal consideration. Nelson Aguilar, very appealing here as a prime target here for Mac Jones. Now, this is very interesting. Nelson Aguilar had 7 targets, 5 receptions, and a touchdown. Again, inflated by that touchdown. Is that going to continue? Is he going to get more targets? So that's something you got to look at when you look at picking up anyone. So let's just go to New England here. I'm going to pull up the New England targets. And Jacoby Myers was the number 1 target getter with 9 and 6 receptions, but he had less fantasy points because he lacked that 1 touchdown. So maybe Jacoby Myers still is the guy, and based on targets, he probably will be, but Nelson Aguilar, definitely a consideration, if you are desperate for a wide receiver. Jalen Reagor, very, very appealing pick here for me if you guys are looking at waiver wire. 6 targets, caught all 6 balls, 49 yards, and a touchdown. And again, what I like about Jalen Reagor is the upside of Jalen Hurts. Now, I was the one that's not high on Jalen Hurts. I called him a bust, and I could be completely wrong, although I did say he does have upside, just not a guy I trust. Now, he is proving me wrong after week 1, but he had an easy matchup. So that's something you got to consider, guys, when you are looking at these guys, is sometimes they just have an easy matchup, and will it continue? That's what we don't know. But Jalen Reagor had a phenomenal week 1. Not phenomenal, but 16.9 points. That's something that you may want to consider on the waiver wire. He is available, I think, in a lot of leagues. But Devontae Smith being the number 1 target with more fantasy points, 8 targets compared to the 6 Reagor had. And, they both have a touchdown. So, again, Reagor could be the one. We don't know. We don't know how good Hurts is. Hurts had a good week, but Reagor, a guy you may want to consider. Mike Williams having a good week as well. I'm a huge, and it was a tough matchup. Mike Williams, again, is he going to stay healthy? But definitely worth a consideration, available in a lot of leagues. I actually stashed Josh Palmer, assuming Mike Williams is going to get hurt. I don't trust Mike Williams, but obviously he got the work this week. And definitely a guy you may want to consider if he's on the waiver wire. 12 targets, 8 receptions, and a touchdown. Definitely going to be the wide receiver 2 there for Justin Herbert. And I love Herbert. The problem is he going to stay healthy? He's just not proven to stay healthy. Let's look back at his record here with the games. Now, his rookie season, 10 games. He did play 16 in 2018. Actually, he's not that bad. He actually played 15 and 15. But again, we're just he always misses games or he gets injured, or he's always very volatile, okay? But again, he's only finished 1 out of the seasons that he's played in, which was his 2018 season. I don't know, man. It could be a big year for Mike Williams. But again, since 2017, he just hasn't wowed me. Could it be this year? Herbert's the guy, possibly, but you may want to consider him. Christian Kirk, again, could be the wide receiver 2 there. But again, they had a big game there, the Cardinals. Is that going to continue, or was that an inflated game? But Christian Kirk clearly looks like the wide receiver 2 in Arizona. But there's just so many targets to go around. I'd be cautious there as well. I want to see if there's anyone else here on the wide receiver list you may want to consider. I would just definitely look at the top point getters for the week. But I think those are the guys you may want to consider. A lot of people saying Terrace Marshall Jr., he's one of those guys that, he might be hyped up for waiver wire, but I'm going to be cautious with him because I just think there's too many targets to go around there in Carolina with Christian McCaffrey, Robbie Anderson, all those guys. So Terrace Marshall Jr., not a guy I'm personally looking at, okay? So, that's pretty much wraps up the wide receivers there for waiver wire week 2. When we look at tight end, Juwan Johnson had a good game. Pharaoh Brown, Adam Troutman could be an option. I like Cole Kmet there, and Cole Kmet with the Bears could be special. He was out for 74% of the snaps, and when Fields actually hits the field, he could be a big upside player. Kmet could get a lot of volume with Fields. Dalton, I don't know. I'm not really excited, but Dalton could make something out of Cole Kmet as well. But those are some tight end targets you definitely want to consider. I'm just trying to see if I'm missing anybody here. Again, Juwan Johnson having a good game in New Orleans. 3 targets, 3 receptions. But again, the 2 touchdowns, right? So he didn't really have a lot of yards, 21 yards, right? Only 3 targets, 3 receptions, but it was a 2 touchdowns. So again, if you go Juwan Johnson expecting a big year, just be cautious because it may not happen, okay? Pharaoh Brown had the 5 targets in Houston, and he didn't have a touchdown, but he did get the 80 yards. So again, if you're looking at Pharaoh Brown, maybe you may consider Pharaoh Brown if you need a tight end over Juwan Johnson, because Juwan Johnson was inflated with those 2 touchdowns. So just something to be aware. Or you may consider Adam Troutman, okay? So Adam Troutman actually had the 6 targets. So actually Adam Troutman had more targets. So again, with New Orleans, one of those guys could emerge as the one. Juwan being the touchdown guy in week 1. But definitely something to consider, all right? When you are going through waiver wires, again, make sure, we talked a little bit about this. Make sure you look at the depth chart. Make sure you look at the situation. Make sure that it wasn't just a one-week wonder type thing, and they were not inflated by those touchdowns. Because, again, so many people draft and invest their free agency acquisition budget on guys that, it's like, okay, well, they had a good week, but that's all they're going to have, right? So you just got to be cautious and make sure you're thinking long-term investment, especially investing a high waiver wire pick or that budget. All right, guys, week 2 waiver wire right here for Fantasy Football 2021. Make sure you guys subscribe. We go year round. Join the Fantasy 365 community where I deliver this to you and I interact with you on the waiver wires. Of course, we do DFS optimal plays, chat, starts and sits, chat, Q&A, all that fun stuff in there. Fantasy 365, join below, and go download the DraftKings app. Use promo code FFLion. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Guys, subscribe, thumbs up, and we'll talk soon. I'm out.